Mr. Thomas Dillon. I've actually had a bit of an ambition to have you on the podcast for a while, but I wanted to wait until I had some runs on the board before I called you up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the recent happenings of yourself? I met you for the first time when there was discussion about maybe running for council, and we've sort of bounced off each other here and there month by month for a while now, but I don't know what's going on in your life. What's happening?
Well, I haven't gone away from that, Jake.
Yeah.
I've got you in my breach, and I've got a couple of your mates in my breach, because come October is council election time, and we need some young, vibrant, visionary people with proactive minds, and you rank very highly.
Oh, it's a lot of responsibility, but I'm honoured to be in that list.
The man who says things can't be done usually gets interrupted by someone already doing it.
Powerful words. All right, so educate me from the start. What's your experience? Because, I mean, you seem to be part of the sort of skeleton of Bunbury.
I was born in Bustleton.
Let's pull this right up close to you.
I was born in Bustleton.
Actually, grab it and bring it to you. She's malleable. There you go.
I was born in Bustleton, and we ended up in Dardanup when I was 4, and we lived there. I was away at boarding college for 5 years, and when I came home from boarding college, I secured a job with the then Southwestern Times newspaper.
Right.
When they were in Stephen Street, where the Bunbury Courthouse is now.
Yep.
But stupidly, I tossed that in after 6 months and went away working in my brother's shearing team, where I learnt to drink and I learnt to fight, and both of those were downfalls. But I rocked and rolled for years, and I married a beautiful Bunbury girl. We have 2 children. My son is 60, my daughter's 59. We have 5 grandchildren, and we have 5 beautiful great-grandchildren. But when I was at the ripe old age of 35 and I'd parked up the drinking addiction, I actually nominated for the Bunbury Town Council when it was about to turn a city. And I had a presidential campaign with the support of some really good people, and I won the seat convincingly, and that was my first stint in local government.
So
and
that role was?
A councillor.
A councillor, right. And it was still the same structure then as well, so you had councillors and a mayor?
Yeah, we had a mayor, and we had 12 councillors. No one was paid, and the mayor of the day, Pat Usher, rest in peace, he was given free water from the then Bunbury Water Board.
Wow.
But there was no sitting fees, there was no allowances, and that's when Bunbury was really pumping.
Interesting. I have a million questions. Let's start from where you just ended there. So being an unpaid position, do you think that adds a different sort of like attitude to the responsibility?
Yes. I'm just about to turn 82, and I was talking to a former councillor only yesterday, and money can be the curse of many evils. In those days, you did it purely because you had passion and you had conviction. I'm told now that councillor sitting fees are quite lucrative. On the other hand, I remember once when the local government of Western Australia did a statewide review of councils, and I was deputy mayor at the time, and they asked me what I thought, and I said, well, I reckon what you should do is sack us all, sack me first, give the mayor $250,000, let's have 5 councillors and pay them a 50% of their working wage,
Yeah, right.
and I'm sure we'll get somewhere. So I contradict myself, but I'm not overly impressed with how Bunbury City Council's going at the moment, but I do advocate strongly for Mayor Jason Miguel and the CEO Alan Ferris.
Right.
They've got the direction, but they're pulling the plough, and it's very hard.
Interesting. Obviously, our CEO is about a year, 18 months into the role.
Yes.
Yeah, and you think in that time he's done a good thing.
I think from what I don't get involved much these days, but looking at the inside from the outside, I think he and Jason have same aspirations, but it's a numbers game, and if you haven't got the numbers, no matter what you're doing and what you're advocating, it's hard to get it over the line. And I remember when I first got on council in 78, I was 35, I was a reformed alcoholic, and I was really pushing for different things. And then the late Dr. Menier, who wasn't the mayor, he pulled me aside afterwards and he said, "Tom, you're going to have a very frustrating life." And I said, "Oh yeah, why is that?" He said, "You have a thing called projected vision." And he said, "You see into the future."
Wow.
But he said, then you've got to convince others to see the same. And I had the privilege of being a pallbearer when Dr. Menier passed away, but I often reflect on what he said to me, projected vision. My late mother had it.
That's amazing.
My mother had it. She was an Irish born and bred Catholic, and she used to see the future.
Yep. So speak to me. That actually really, that speaks to me in a big way. I feel like in a way, I don't know if it's exactly what you're talking about, but I've been sort of battling this problem. It's not a problem. The problem is I'm trying to keep everyone up with me. I'm trying to say this is, I bet on my future projections rather than betting on what's happening right now. And I struggle with my bookkeeper. I struggle with my fiance sometimes. I struggle with my family and my friends. Be like, it's all good. I know it's not happening now, but it will happen. We just need to do the steps right now for that thing to happen. So talk to me. Projected vision, what is that to you? How would you explain that?
I've done a few things in my time, and I've tried to do a few things that I couldn't get done because I was reliant on people to support me. A couple of the things that I've done, I got a fair sort of a toweling for doing them. I got Chris and Dozer Dillon in council because I pushed and shoved and barged, and I got a few things done. I don't chase accolades for that, but I look back now some 50 years later and I think, how would it have been if I hadn't have pushed and shoved? These things wouldn't have done. One of the things I tried to stop, but I was no longer in council, I tried to stop the rail into the Bunbury City railway station. I said, that's crazy, taking that out 2 or 3 kilometres out of town. If you go to Europe and you go to places like Rome and Florence and Venice, all those places in the UK, your train departs from and ends up right in the very heart of the city.
And typically underneath it all.
Well, when they decommissioned the rail into Bunbury CDB and built the station out at Wollaston, the rail system had ceased. Road freight was introduced. Prior to that, everything had to come by rail, and everything used to go into the heart of Bunbury, and freight was distributed accordingly. They then closed the line down, and the only train that was going to be using it was the Australind.
Right.
And I got up on my soapbox a number of times, and I look back, and now one of the things that you hear the faithful bring the train back into the CBD. Well, I'm talking the early 80s, the very early 80s.
Yeah.
They started the government started a freight company, Total West, and it was known in the fraternity as Total Mess, because your freight for Kalgoorlie might end up in Bunbury and your Bunbury freight could end up in Geraldton. But it saddens me that the train isn't coming into the centre of our city. Many, many people used to come by train for the day into Bunbury, have a walk around, have lunch maybe at places like the Rose Hotel and right in the CBD, catch the train back. Long weekends and Easter, they would run special trains, additional extra trains, and plonk the passengers in the heart of the city. Now you've got a 3K walk or a taxi or a shuttle bus or whatever's available.
Fill in the blank, yeah. Yeah, well, I do know it's quite the topic of discussion with, like, it seems to be there's a few things that will immediately come up if you start talking about council and what councillors are doing. You've got the jetty baths, you know, when's it being built, is it being built? You've got the train, where should it be? And you've got homelessness, seems to be a...
Oh, don't touch me on homelessness. It's...
Come on, talk to me, Tom, tell me.
It's the saddest plight, not only in Bunbury, but many other parts of Western Australia from what I see, and in Melbourne and Sydney. But the saddest I've ever seen was in Vancouver in Canada. The homeless people were allocated a parkland, and I'm talking thousands of people. And when we would be on our coach, you would go past it and it was heartbreaking, gut-wrenching. I've been advocating, and some people say, oh, you're heading down the wrong road, but I've advocated that the former Bunbury Fire Station in Forest Avenue is unused. It's an asset of the WA Fire Brigade. And I've said to myself and I've said to others, why can't we turn that into an abode for these less fortunate people? Build mezzanine floors. It's secure. There's a former station manager's house alongside, caretaker. You got doctors, pharmacy, shopping centre, all the needs. But then I get told, no, they don't want to be in a complex like that. They want to be nomadic. So I don't know. I was a major player along with the Bricknell family, and Dr. Manier was our chairman, and we got the music shelter built.
Yep.
And I went to Perth and I rounded up money from my days in mining, and I raised $300,000, a lot of it from out of Bunbury, to build that music shell as a memorial to a great civic leader in the late Graham Bricknell, the grandfather of our current mayor. But it really, I have to stop looking because it churns me when I see these less fortunate people shacked up in there. And I don't know. Is it a local government responsibility? Is it a state government responsibility? Is it a federal government responsibility? I don't know. But someone's got to bite the bullet and get the solution, whatever it is. I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong. But I like someone else to fix this expanding problem.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's a spiky problem because I feel like no matter how you address it, you have this, I know I do, like I've spoken about it with, federal elects, I've spoken about it with business owners, I've spoken about it with friends, all on this platform. And you get to a point where I'm like, I don't want to say anything that's going to offend anyone to begin with, but at some point you got to go, hey man, I don't feel like comfortable with this. This is my city. I love this city.
Yes.
I give a lot to this city. I participate. I contribute. I do the thing. And when you see that, and especially when you bring your friends from Perth or over east or haven't been overseas, and you're like, and this is like the center of it, and it is what it is. But who is a problem? Who is a person to solve that problem? What does that solution look like? Because as a problem solver, I feel in business, in life, I have no idea how you would solve that. I mean, if people don't want to accept help, and I think a lot of times there's drug abuse, there's mental illness, there's a lot of elements to this where it's not a one solution, it's not a one thing solution. It's a multifaceted approach, and I don't know who that professional is to fix that problem.
Well, I can speak with authority. It is 48 years come Easter that I have abstained from alcohol, thanks to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was able to turn my life around. When I look at what alcohol cost me and did to me, and I'm not kowtowing people who can have a beer. I couldn't even open the bottle of a beer without going off. I was a nasty pasty, and one drink was too many and 1,000 wasn't enough. And at the footy club, when guys would be going home, I'd be just getting started.
Yeah.
I'd pin my ears back and I'd have booze tipping out of my ears. But not everybody is able to do that. And it was an act of God for me, and an act of God that my wife hung in with me. And I have great-grandchildren now that we idolise. I've had cancer treatment in the middle of last year, and right now my wife is in her 4th year of fighting terminal cancer. And you say, why is this happening to us? Well, you know, we've all got to take a turn, and you never know what's around the corner. And recovery from drugs and alcoholism or whatever. When I was flying high at 18, 19 years of age, I don't know if drugs were around. And if they were, I was too busy drinking booze to participate in drugs. But I've seen it in extended family members, and I see it every other day, sadly, in Bunbury.
Yeah.
And it's horrendous. And the cost, a jug of beer in my time was 8 shillings, 80 cents in your language. And I used to drink out of the jug because the glasses were too small. So, I don't know. I mean, we could talk for hours.
I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. One thing's for sure. The cost of alcohol is crazy. We've just got back from Japan, and the cost of alcohol is like a quarter of it. And you're like, oh, I understand why people drink here. You come home, like we bought 16 500ml 9% cans for like $21 from the servo in Japan. $21 gets you like 1.8 drinks here, like not even 2 whole drinks. You know, like it doesn't compute to me like the same drink here. So then you take into account the drugs, the cost of the drugs, and then the idea of, you know, let's talk about the example of the people who are homeless that are doing these drugs and this alcohol. Where's the money coming from? Money's coming from crime, right? Or from drugs. And then all of a sudden the snake starts to eat its tail here, and you go, okay, well, now where mental illness is directly resulting in crime. Crime is then putting other people in positions where they're either, you know, I'm so scared to talk about this topic on camera because you just don't want to be perceived as saying the wrong thing, you know?
I watch the news every night. I'm a lounge potato. Normally, the first 6 stories are about crime.
Right.
Or the consequences of crime, car stealing, assaults, break and enter.
Domestic violence.
I mean, I got done over in 1994 by 3 drug deadbeats at 3 o'clock in the morning here in Bunbury when I defended a lady, and I got out of it 2 broken knees, a broken leg, a busted hip joint, broken ribs, and a busted shoulder joint. And it took 2 years for a surgeon in Perth to rebuild me. And if he hadn't have pulled it on, 5 others declined it, my life was a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I had quite a few months in a wheelchair. And that was absolutely frustrating for me.
We're talking 31 years ago this happened.
New Year's Eve, 1994.
It's hard to believe that you're as capable as you are all this time later, because that's a serious list of stuff to happen in a bloody street fight, or not a street fight, an ambush by the sounds of it.
What hurt most of all, when it finally got to court, these 3 guys came up from downstairs and they were held in the courtroom, and we were going to lunch, and the judge of the day or the magistrate of the day told them, the ringleader, you're going to go to jail for 7 years or a serious fine, and your 2 mates are going to go for a less sentence. The court was reconvened at 2 o'clock. I was the guilty party. They weren't responsible for what they did because they were affected by drugs and alcohol. So they got community service and probation.
No way.
And I was wheelchair, surgery, 2 crutches, 2 walking sticks, walking stick for 2 years.
Now, at the time, you're 51 years of age?
I would have been, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. And how were these young blokes, what in their...
They were only young. They were the main bloke that finished up pinging me.
Yeah.
Because 2 were behind, 1 pushed me, 1 king hit me, and the big bloke out the front dropped me.
Yeah.
Well, then you're on the ground and there's 3 kicking into you.
Yeah, it's all over.
Yeah, it's bloody hard. I mean, I was pretty good. I used to run to get a fight.
Yeah.
Now I can't run to get away.
Yeah.
But had I been able to get up, I might have encountered them. I don't know how I would have gone, but yeah. Anyway, that's to me. It's still I'm over it, but it sticks in my mind.
Oh yeah, you
drugs and alcohol.
100%, 100%. I mean, I can't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. I know that, and because of that, I don't put myself in harm's way. I'm not out after midnight. As much as I love going into town. I don't do it.
I wouldn't do it.
You know?
I wouldn't do it.
And not saying that this is necessarily the thing, and I definitely don't advocate that Bunbury is a dangerous place, but as someone who does put myself in front of the camera and, you know, has some opinions and this and that, I don't know who's got a knife, I don't know who's got a problem with me, and I don't know who's had too much to drink. I just don't know. Knives
and guns and all of that and baseball bats, in my day you would never, ever be subjected to that. It was toe-to-toe.
Yeah.
And onlookers wouldn't intervene unless you were about to be assassinated.
Yeah.
Toe-to-toe, face-to-face. I shudder to think I've got a great-grandson who's 15 now, and I look at him and I think, how's it going to be when you start going out? You never had any hesitation about going out in my era.
Yeah.
And Bunbury was a magnet for people to come. Gold miners, coal miners, wheat and sheep farmers, they all came to Bunbury. Kambana Caravan Park was always packed in the summer.
Yep.
The old Punch Bowl Caravan Park, jetty baths.
Yep.
People were holidaying around Hands Oval, the recreation ground.
Well, tell me, obviously you've got a fairly good spread of what Bunbury was and what Bunbury is. Was it better back then?
Oh, definitely.
Really?
Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah?
I mean, we're a city. We became a city in 1979.
Yep.
But aside from the things I see that sadden me, I get very sad when I see empty shops in the CBD.
100%.
It saddens me. And we all know they're going out of town. We don't have reason to go into the centre of the city, but I take a drive and I think, what can we do to revive it? You know, you're fighting a bushfire with a wet spud bag.
Yeah, it is one of those things where you, I mean, there's a lot of things that, you know, the further I get into business, the more I understand the decisions of the shop owners, the shop owners as in the people who own the building, then the people who own the shop that rent from those people, and then the mentality of the customer who goes, well, I'm not going to go here because I don't have option A, B, and C. I've only got B, and I can't get a feed at the end of it, you know? So it's like you're going to go where those options are. But you've got blokes who own property that will defend their rental insurance where they're going to get the same amount of money whether it's rented or not. So they're not motivated to put a renter in there or to lower their rate by 10, 15% to fill that gap. It's like, well, no, I'm just going to protect my asset. But then you zoom out of that, you go, well, is the asset not the greatest surrounds? Is your shop not worth more in 10 years' time when you've got occupancy either side of it and in yours, right? Because you're protecting your month-to-month income. Sure, your rental insurance is paying that. But what happens in 5 years' time when you want to sell that for a profit?
It's my grandson, he's a single parent with 2 little girls. He's having to vacate where he's been for the last 2 years, and it's going to cost him over $600 a week for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house out of Bunbury. but he's not on that sort of money. Everything is bloody tough.
Yeah.
And we've just seen the state election. We're around the corner from a federal election. To talk the talk is one thing, but to put your shoulder to the wheel and do the hard yards is something else. I joked with the mayor not long ago. I said, Mr. Mayor, I said, if Joe Biden can be 81 and be the President of the United States, how would you feel if I made a comeback into council at 82 years of age?
Yeah.
He said, good God, Tom, don't thrust that on me. He said,
Come on, I'll run your campaign for you. Let's go.
He said we'd have to have the place full of security.
Yeah.
I could never handle it. I mean, I've always been referred to as outspoken, and as I said, dozer Dillon, but get on and get it done.
Let's talk about, you said before that it was said to you that you're going to live a life of frustration because of this projected vision that you had and trying to keep everyone up to your speed. Now, that obviously included seeing things that you thought were a good, intention or ambition and trying to get those things happening. Talk to me about the things that you got to happen and the things that you thought were a good idea that didn't happen.
In my early days, my friend was a champion Speedway solo rider, and I went to Claremont to see him ride against England. I'd never been to Speedway. And then I got addicted to it, and we were going up every Friday night.
Yep.
But then I got attracted to the building of the Bunbury Speedway, and I'm talking 1971, 72.
Right.
And I got in there and I ruffled a lot of feathers. But it was going to be a 2-year project to get it built. Well, we got it built in 9 months, and I brought in people with the expertise and the necessary equipment. And I'm talking scrapers, bulldozers, front-end loaders, graders. We got it built. And then I got approached from a fellow promoter that the world champion, the then Ivan Major, was coming to Australia.
Yeah.
And I went out on a limb and I booked him and I got him paid for through a raffle because the club didn't have the money.
Yep.
But I raffled a motorbike and he came to the Bunbury Speedway in 73.
Wow.
On a long weekend.
Yep.
And I thought it was a meeting of my creditors because the place was packed.
Of course.
And he put on a show.
Yeah.
And then woe betide, I was running the Adelaide Speedway 2 years later, and he came to Adelaide to ride. And when he got interviewed, I was standing back from the MC. He said, this fellow here, Tommy Dillon, he said, I raced for him in Bunbury in Western Australia, and he said he gave me the best hospitality I've ever had anywhere, and he gave us the best track I've ever raced on.
Unreal.
And I had that accolade. And then he gave me a book about himself, signed by himself, and he gave me some pictures and stuff like that. And I loaned that book to someone, and it grew legs.
Now it's gone.
And I'm still looking for it.
The books are the best for that. Someone says, can you borrow it? You know what? Just have it, all right? Because you're not going to give it back anyway.
Yeah, but that was one thing. And then the music shell, I bit the bullet and I said to Dr. Mania, I will get the money for my out-of-pocket expenses, and they were about $1,250, fuel and phone and stuff like that.
Yep.
We had a fundraiser. He wanted $75,000. And I said, we're not paying that because we haven't got it.
Oh, is this a performer?
No, a fundraiser to build a music shell.
Right.
And I look at the music shell now and it cost us $450,000. And the great Dan Perkins and his company, they built it. They delivered it to us on time, on budget, and he took a big cut as his contribution.
So when was that built? 92, 94.
Gee whiz. I'll have to go and have a look at the plaque.
Yeah.
I think I was deputy mayor, but got that built.
Yep.
And myself and a promoter lady, we put on a couple of good concerts free to the public.
Yep.
And we're all good at attending something when it's free. But if you want $2 for Bill Bloggs and his wife to come, they won't.
Over.
I've been heavily involved and still am. It's my sole passion now with the Bunbury Geograph Motor Museum.
Right.
Now, there's 5 of us got that happening. We have it. We're heading up now to our 5th year of the lease. We've got a 5-year option come October, but that is a major attraction in the centre of the city. And we're working all of the time to expand it with ideas, to expand it with attractions, and we're working on some very, very good attractions as we speak in the way of exhibits.
Right.
There's some good stuff out there that we're working hard to snare. Because of my bad health last year and my wife's prolonged bad health, I'm restricted. But I just put her into hospital just before I came here to see you, so I'm able to be out and about. But I'm not comfortable if my wife is alone and I'm not there. So
Yeah, of course.
that's my priority.
Yeah.
It jerked me into gear, I can tell you.
Yeah, well, by the sounds of it,
The best I could ever do was make a cup of tea and a bit of toast.
Yeah.
Now I can cook different dishes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest I'd be able to open a restaurant, but I love cooking a silver side, and my daughter, we're in a granny flat at the back of my daughter's house.
Oh, beautiful.
So she's right there to protect us.
Yeah.
No, we've got a lovely life at the moment,
Yep.
but bad health is something. I've got the best of medical practitioners for Beverly and myself.
Yep. So as far as we touched on some things that you got done, what are some things that you wanted to see happen, or maybe even still want to see happen, that are either you see them being a hard slog or back in the day didn't happen?
Yeah. Hello. What I've been, and I like to get up on my soapbox and then people yell out, "Get down your mug."
Of course.
We are a port. The port is the hub of Bunbury and the greater southwest.
Yep.
You drive along the back beach and you see 6 and 7 ships sitting out there. You look in the harbour and it's full of ships. What a wonderful setup.
Yeah.
But we have to attract people.
Right.
Now, in my younger days when I was driving trucks and heavy machinery, if I was driving a truck, I wanted to go on the shortest route possible.
Naturally.
I was, and still am, a strong advocate for the Bunbury Outer Ring Road.
Yep.
And I see the truckies and I talk to truckies and they say, "This is great.
Yeah.
We're going to Augusta, we're going to Manjimup, we're going to Margaret River. We just keep on going. We don't have to go into this town, we don't have to go into that town." In my day, you had to go through the main street of Mandurah.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my day, if you were driving up north, you had to go through the heart of Geraldton.
Yep.
So has it affected the trade in the city? I took a friend for a drive on it the other day and I said to him, "Now, if you want to go into Bunbury, you can go in this route, you can go in that route, that route. But if you don't want to go into Bunbury, you don't have to go into Bunbury. You can go on further south." The volume of traffic going north and going south is astounding. I went and sat out there a few weeks ago and watched it.
Yep.
Now, they are people that have been down to Margaret River or Augusta or Dunsborough, Bustleton, or they're people who are going down there and they've made up their minds before they've left
That's the argument, is it not?
where they're going
Right.
and how long we're going there for.
When you leave Perth, the bypass doesn't determine whether you're coming to Bunbury, right?
No.
And I think the percentage of the cars that go through Eelup Roundabout and into Bunbury compared to the ones who went around and deflected Bunbury before the Outer Ring Road was like 3%. 3%, and that's locals usually coming from Eton into Bunbury.
I was at Farmers Market the other day, and in days gone by prior to the Ring Road opening, you had to go up Victoria Road to the roundabout to come down and get out.
Yep.
Now, there's very little traffic coming by.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Farmers market people were smart enough. They've built a beautiful state-of-the-art complex down at Vass.
You've seen it?
I haven't been in.
It's amazing.
But if we don't get you here, we're going to get you down there.
Yeah.
How's that for projected vision?
Yeah, amazing. Dad used to have the contract back when they were where Mutton Burns is.
Yes.
So Dad had the contract to clean the plastic barriers at the front of those tiered shelves, a big square thing.
Yes.
So we used to go there every Monday and we'd take all of these plastic things out, scrub them back and front, then put them back. And I remember back then thinking, like, is there money in fruit and veg? And then they went from, because before that they were in that spot where the radiology joint is. SKG. So they went from there to the Martin Burns, and it would just be so busy in there on a Saturday and Sunday, to now seeing the evolution in Bustleton, where they've literally got a fenced off dog area with beautiful grass that's bigger than my backyard.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Like, that's amazing. And talk about, like, from a business point of view, like, I walked through there the other day, a little bit hungover, so my judgment wasn't very clear. But I walked through and I'm thinking they've got $10 million worth of stock sitting on shelves and sitting in fridges.
Yeah.
Before you even take into account the cost of the 15 acres that they're on, the sheltered car parks that they've got, they got a pizza joint out the front, they got a bakery, they got a cafe, they got this and that and all the fresh fruit and everything, so you can just walk in and grab your thing, or you can go in and do the full experience. Like, who imagined that first?
Now you got me thinking of going for a drive tomorrow.
100%. It's worth it. I didn't understand. When you Google what things to do in Bunbury, do you know what number one is?
Farmers market.
Farmers market.
Yeah.
I was at church on Sunday and I went to get a coffee before I went to church. There's 2 buses that dropped off like 60 Asian people all going to the farmers market as if it's the zoo or something.
Yep.
Like I literally couldn't believe that these guys are going to it as an attraction, not as a farmers market, but that's what it is. But
I know one of the proprietors very well, Graham.
Yep.
And he started in Bustleton.
There's 2 of them?
Yeah, Graham and Kevin.
Right.
Then Graham moved up here to Ramsey Road, where you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went over there to Martin Burns, where Martin Burns is, and then he's where he is.
Yep.
And on opening day, my wife and I decided to go out and have a look. Well, I couldn't believe it. But Kevin spotted me and Graham spotted me and bought me a coffee, and he said, Tom, do you know, he said, I still wish you were on council. He said, it's taken us 7 years to be able to get this place built and happening.
Really?
That's very sinful.
That's crazy. I wonder how quick it happened in Bustleton.
Yeah, the welcome mat's always out there.
Well, Bustleton, I love Bunbury, all right? I love Bunbury. I'm going to footnote that. Bustleton seems to be geared for progress. They seem to be ready to strike. Like, every time you drive down there's something going on. Always roadworks, but there's always something going on being built.
Years ago, my friend Danny Green, when he retired, his management structure were looking for something to do. Mm-hmm. And Mick, the promotional manager, he called me up and he said, Tom, we're looking at doing a huge concert with Jimmy Barnes and all of this. So he said, would you talk to council and see if they would consider? So I went and I saw the mayor of the day, my dear friend David Smith, and I said, we'd like to do this concert at the recreation ground with the sound going out to the sea. And he said, I don't see a problem with that. So he called an officer lady in, and he directed her to give me a dossier in a week's time. And Mick came down that week, the following week, and I had the dossier. The do's and the don'ts, he threw it in the back seat and he said, Tom, go down to Bustleton and see if they will take it on, which I did. And that afternoon, I had a document put in front of me that I wasn't authorised to sign to say we want this Oz Rock for 5 years minimum.
Wow.
And we will give you the ground, we will give you assistance with traffic management, we will give you our Parks and Gardens superintendent. It was just come on down. So we had 2 of those.
Yep.
We had to close the gates at 5 o'clock on the first one with Jimmy Barnes and trying to think of all the others. It was huge and it was stinking hot.
Yep.
And the bar couldn't handle it. And then the next year we had memory's gone. And then unfortunately Mick, the creative man, he got bad health, and so that fell off the rail. But those 2 concerts could have been in Bunbury, and it was marvellous. The best thing I've seen happen in recent years was the AFL scratch match here.
Unreal.
I got to that, and the mayor came to see me where I was seated, and I said, Jason, this is what we need, attractions. Well, I wasn't aware then that there's an AFL fixture here in early June.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who's a member of North Melbourne.
Yep.
And he rang me the other day and he said, I've managed to get 2 tickets in the grandstand, and he said, one's for me and one's for you.
Unreal.
And I'm counting the days.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be a crush of 15,000, 16,000 people. I know they're going to put up more demountable stands, and they've got 3 months in which to address whatever deficiencies are said to be there.
Yep.
But that's huge for Bunbury, the southwest, and there's a massive migration of people come down from Perth.
It feels like migration south from Perth and west from over east. Feels like that is the topic at the moment, just people buying these houses sight unseen, you know, all around this area, all around Bunbury, you know, and then 6 months later coming and moving here.
Where we live, there was a house went on the market the other day in South Bunbury.
Yep.
And the very next day, it didn't have under offer or nothing. It just had sold.
Yeah.
There's a call for people who want to be in Bunbury. My kids were born here. They grew up here. They schooled here. Bunbury can provide everything, you know. The health campus here, okay, they have hiccups, but my wife and I have had the best of attention over the years.
Yeah.
Education, everything is here. I don't get into the university stuff here because I don't understand it, but there's other things that can, should and must be plonked in Bunbury. You know, you and I could talk for hours.
Yeah.
Jake, that's why you and some of your younger mates, remember I was 35 when I got on council. I was called kiddo in the start. But young, visionary, vibrant people, male and female, need to take hold of it by the throat and say, this is what we're doing. Now, Donald Trump, I'm an admirer of Donald. I've got a cousin in Florida who loves him.
Yep.
Her sister in Brooklyn, hates him. She's threatening to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yep.
But is he right? Is he wrong? The car guy, Elon Musk, is he right? Is he wrong? You know, I watch TV prolifically. The said misuse of public money in recent years is frightening.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
The infiltration of crime, gangs, criminals. We talked about the drugs and alcohol and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Donald and Elon and a few others are going through them with a fine-tooth comb. I don't know. I've been to America. I've been to Florida, Canada, been to New York, and you see it. We're never going to be New York, but on a scale, they've got their problems too. But I don't know. I'm watching anxiously with this upcoming federal election. Will it be Albo or will it be Dutton? Don't know.
Yeah.
As long as they pay my pension, that's all I'm on about.
Yeah, that's all that bloody matters, right? Let's go back a step. So Bustleton not only said yes, but they said we want it and we want to keep it. And before that happened, Bunbury said, maybe here's what needs to happen.
Oh, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that.
So what is, using that as an analogy, what's the difference there? Like in present time, like what would be the, red tape that we'd have to jump through that Bustleton seemingly doesn't have?
Well, we at the Bunbury Geograph Motor Museum introduced Groovin and
Bumpers and Beats. Yeah.
Now, no one on the outside would know the work and the effort that we 5 people put into that, along with our volunteers.
Mm.
And the first year, we attracted 5,000 people, free to the public and outgoing expenditure to us. So my role was to go and solicit for funding and sponsorship.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And they christened me Underpants because I'm always on the bum. The next year, we had 15,000 people.
Huge.
You couldn't get a bed in Bunbury. The place was packed.
Yep.
But we had to jump some hurdles. And unfortunately, one of the hardest problems we encountered was some minority traders in the CBD opposed us being in the CBD because we were taking parking spaces. Well, hang on, go to the MCG and see if you can park outside the MCG, or go to Optus Stadium. We just had the Grand Prix in Melbourne. Yep. I've been to Albert Park. I've been to a Grand Prix. You don't park just outside the Grand Prix. We got on a tram and it dropped us about 1 kilometre away from the entrance, and I was on a walking stick.
And then you'd trek in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sometimes, in my outspoken nature, say, yes, we're a city since 1979, October. Now, that's a few years ago. How far have we gone? The population then was 24,000. You had to be 24,000 residents to qualify for city status.
Okay.
Are we 124,000? I don't think so.
I think Bunbury's 45.
It's not an escalation. I worked driving trucks and machinery in Mandurah in the mid-60s, building the groins, the first 2 groins.
Yep.
Mandurah had 5,000 people. It used to close on a Wednesday afternoon and open on Saturday afternoon.
Really?
And we would be thundering down the main street of Mandurah and up over the old bridge with our trucks loaded with huge 6 and 7 ton rocks.
Yep.
The Mandurah population now, and it doesn't have industry.
And also the money in Mandurah is crazy. Like the amount of high rises in Mandurah.
They had the Crab Fest last weekend.
Yep.
And there was a multitude of people. And where the bloody hell did they get all those crabs from?
Yeah.
But we used to have the Aqua Spectacular here.
That was all wakeboarding and yeah. See, something like that seems to be an easy win. You've got the estuary, it's right there, you've got seating all around.
In the 60s, we had the Bunbury Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And then we had the Kambana Queen Festival. The girls used to go in the Queen of the Mardi Gras or the Queen of the Kambana Queen. We had an Australian motorbike championship, started down by the Burlington Hotel, came straight up to the War Memorial, down to Stirling Street and out and around and up along the back beach.
Yep.
We had car racing. We didn't have the roundabouts and we didn't have the impediments.
Yep.
But I can remember we were living in Dardenhaven. My brother had a car and we came in and we had to park and walk in. We had to park where the Admiral Motor Inn is now to get in to see the racing. So we had all those things. The Bunbury race round, it used to coincide with trots. So they had the Bunbury Stakes on Tuesday, the Cronshaw Cup. They had trots Wednesday night, the Bunbury Cup Thursday, trots again Friday night. Bunbury was...
Yeah, try walking on Saturday. Unreal.
But, you know, these things too, with all the constraints, and not bagging council or any authority, but public liability doesn't choke you, it kills you.
Yeah. You know, I used to work at Iluka.
Yes.
And one thing that I saw happen in the short time that I was there, I was maybe there as a contractor for, say, 18 months and then worked for them for 18 months. And the thing that I saw was you'd be doing your thing and then a bloke would trip over this thing. And then as a measure, they have to do something about that. They can't just say, hey, you know what, everyone just chill out, don't walk as quickly. Yeah. They have to turn that into a ramp. It can't just be a step, now it's got to be a ramp, right? And then the next week someone falls down this thing and then they go, well, now we've got to put protective bars that are 3 rungs up instead of 2 because the tall people can still fall over. And then after the three years that I've been there, I'm like, I've seen so many things that are completely unnecessary that are implemented because something has to happen. Now, it seems to be this structure of mentality bleeds into everything because it feels like because an idiot made a mistake before me, I almost get held back to not make that same mistake in the way that they did. And I feel like that is exactly the red tape that I'm talking about. Now, I'm not saying that I'm hard done by and I've tried to do all these things and I haven't been able to, but it just feels like the people, the visionaries, the ambitious people are held back by the failures of other people in the past.
Jake, when I look at you, a young, handsome man,
Cool.
Well, I was never that, but I'm an old fuddy now, but I'm looking at you and I'm listening to you, and don't be belittled. You're a rebirth of Tom Dillon, so you better get ready for a very frustrating life.
Don't say that. I work very hard to stay nice and chill. I definitely, obviously we've had this conversation at length a couple of years ago about running for council. And I think it's something that feels very organic that I would like to do. I think one of the big things is I want to do it when I don't have I don't want to say any financial burden because I think you always do in business, but I think I need to find a little bit more consistency in and the business is doing things now that I've been waiting for 6 years. Finally, we can afford to put fuel in the car and enjoy. You know, we went to Japan for a couple of weeks. We could actually do that. You know, it hurt, but we did it. And I feel like, if I was in a position where I'm not coming home stressing about how the shopping gets paid, how these repayments get made, that's one thing. And that's in the pipeline. That's happening. The second thing is I can't be a strong person with a good voice and a backbone surrounded by people who don't have the same attributes. And I think your ideal goal of a majority handful of young people stepping up at the same time is not only a good idea, it's the only idea that would work.
Absolutely. Now, I can tell you I have never, ever had money problems. And do you know why? Because I've never had any money. So I've floundered through life. When is the right time? I went for council in 1978 as a party dare. A lady said to me, you're always mouthing off.
Yeah.
Why don't you do it? I said, well, I bloody well will.
Party dare Dillon.
Yeah. I remember a fellow, when I was running the Speedway in Adelaide, he was one of the directors, and he was telling me how he had to do national service. Mm-hmm. And one of the things was parachuting. So he said we learnt jumping off rails and all the rest of it, and then the day came when we got shoved into a plane and we had to parachute. And he said the sergeant, typical sergeant with hobnail boots, he said, I was the last one to jump. And he said, when it came my turn, he said, I turned around and I said, Sarge, I can't do it. Oh, yes, he said, you can. And he said he put his boot in between my shoulder blades and booted me out the door. And he said the next thing I was parachuting.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I could rant on for hours.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. You know, where I've last year I had a vasectomy, a reversal at the age of 31, which seems crazy to some people. We've just got the results back, and it was successful. So now we're in the conception. Yeah, we're in the we're trying to get pregnant sometime this year. And that's one of those things where like, oh, I'm going to wait till you afford it and make sure, like, no, let's get pregnant right now. We'll figure it out. Yeah. And I think one thing that business has taught me is do the thing that makes sense to the business, not to the accountant. That allows you to just go like, well, if I got to make $100,000 this month, I'll figure it out. Yeah. I don't know how, but the how doesn't really matter as long as the why makes sense. If the why makes sense, the how will come. And, as you can see, well, you didn't see my old place, but this is a bit of a progression, you could say, from where I was before, and like what the business is doing has happened because of that mentality of just like, let's go the deep end. And if I don't know how to swim in 10 minutes or 10 months, then we'll figure that out then. But until then, we'll just keep kicking. The council thing scares me, dude. It scares me because I think the big thing is like, I have people ask how I do this. Like I get on camera and I talk for 2 hours and I try not to have a filter and I have all different people on and I get all these different, these different perspectives and experience through story. And this doesn't really bother me. Like this will live forever. This doesn't bother me at all. But I feel like representing the place that I love and to have that mobile number accessible to everyone to call up and say like, I don't like this and I don't like that. That's what bloody worries me.
In my younger days, the Brunswick show was a big thing and it still is. But there was a boxing tent. Arthur Blum from Bustleton, he used to have the boxing tent and he'd have 6 or 8 guys up on the plank and he'd have his own blokes in the crowd as well. But I'm there one day and £5 if anyone will fight this bloke. So I had ridden a push bike from Dardanup over to Brunswick.
Unreal.
The bikes had to be licensed in those days. My bike wasn't licensed and it didn't have a light.
Yeah.
But I put my hand up because £5, that was huge. I'm going to be a millionaire this week. So I took this young fellow on. Well, he belted me from pillar to post over 3 rounds and I rode home on my push bike with a broken nose and black eyes and everything.
Yeah.
But I took the challenge and that's what it's about, is take the challenge, bite the bullet. Danny Green, when I was sick, he said to me, Tom, he said, I'm telling you now, in this fight you're going to have, if you're feeling buggered, lean on the ropes, but don't lay on the canvas because if you lay on the canvas, you're dead meat and someone will advertise on the soles of your boots.
Powerful.
No one better than Danny.
Yeah, that's actually crazy. That's
He's crazy too. He lives down Margaret River now and
oh, really?
He's a surfing nut.
Yeah?
A complete nut. But
yeah, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? He's on the adrenaline. How interesting.
And fitter than a fiddle. Tell
me, obviously through all of this, I don't know whether this is something you've consciously asked yourself, but there has to be a mission that lies in Tom Dillon. What's your motivation been like? Well, obviously you are quite outspoken and you seem to be somewhat fearless, but what's the motivation behind that? Is it a change thing? Is it a progress thing? Like what?
Well, I'm still involved. Like Colin Piacentini is a very close friend of mine, and Colin has done some enormous things for Bunbury. Enormous. Regrettably, about 6 years ago, he engaged an international consultant. It cost him $85,000 to revitalise the CBD of Bunbury.
Okay.
They put out a report, and I know to this day it has never been activated, but the CEO and the mayor are addressing it as we speak.
Yep.
Now, if that plan had been respectfully considered, some of it, all of it, most of it,
yep,
it would have made a big difference. It would have made a big difference. Now, the bridge, the beautiful bridge
Yeah,
across the inlet.
Love
Colin was in Croatia, and the bridge was being built but not elevated. And Colin got hold of it, and he rang me from Croatia and he said, Tom, that bridge, he said, they're going to put it down lower than the road. He said, the boats will never get in and out. Mm. And I said, well, I haven't got a boat, so I'm not worried.
Yeah.
He said, you go to council tonight and you tell them that the cost of weighing the bridge, lifting the bridge, is not their problem. We are paying for it.
Wow.
And he spent $135,000 to have that bridge elevated as it is today. What a spectacular sight to come into Bunbury of a night time and see that beautiful bridge illuminated.
It's almost iconic of Bunbury now.
Colin now lives in an apartment overlooking that bridge.
Yep.
And I go down there and bum a cup of tea off him and his wife, his beautiful wife. And I said, that bridge should be called Piacentini's Bridge. Mm. No, he said, I don't want any of that. That's just one of the things. Mm. The other thing that got mooted some years ago was the ocean pool.
Yeah.
Now, there was a thrust and the movers and shakers of the day approached Piacentini's. And Colin's son, Kim, and one of their engineers, they did a plan. And the plan was in black and white. And they said, we will put the big excavation machinery in there and we'll dig that hole as a contribution to the city.
Wow.
Now, I know the machines, they're 500-tonne diggers. They'll break that basalt rock.
Yep.
Never been asked to come and dig it.
That I feel like that and the artificial reef, because I had Troy Bodigal was my second most previous guest.
Troy is dynamic.
Oh, Troy's a weapon. I'd hate to see him in a street fight, actually. I reckon he'd get into it,
He'd be on my side.
Yeah, or else. Yeah, no, but the like the artificial reef and the jetty pool are two things that just seem like, if you close your eyes and think about what that looks like on a summer's Sunday afternoon, both things are just so obviously positive. They're good things. You know, can you imagine sitting down dude, I see it from a business point of view. I see it as this awesome thing where you could think of any amount of mobile things that you can pull in front of it and make $1 million a year doing portable ice baths or saunas and getting in and out of the thing. If you've got if you turn Bunbury into a surf spot with the artificial reef, you've got board stores, you've got everything. You know what I mean? And there's everything along the ocean right now where there's spots to do it. It's so clearly a thing that should happen, but it feels like it's a conversation that only seems to be happening with the people who either really want it to happen or really don't want it to happen, and everyone else is just struggling with the cost of living.
Troy Bodigal, he approached Piacentini's for assistance, and he got assistance.
This is for the reef?
The first one. The first one. Now, I used to get up every morning and go down and sit up on the deck and watch what they were doing. That was a phenomenal undertaking. But when they pulled it out, the ocean wasn't conducive and it broke.
Right.
The material, Troy told me in hindsight, was not tough enough. But he had all the rationale as to why it would work.
Yep.
Now, he had no fear of me surfing because I had to go surfing in the 1960s on a longboard at Yellingup, and I went head first into the sand, tore the skin off me face and me nose.
Yeah, I've done the same from here to here.
Yeah, tracked the board down and gave it to my mate and said, here you are, mate, this is yours.
I never want this back.
I just, a friend of mine is from Newcastle.
Yep.
He's here in Bunbury, and he tells me that ocean pools are rampant all along that coastline.
Yep.
When we were kids, we were in Dardanup and we were bussed in and we were taught to swim at the jetty baths. But the big buzz of the day was Fonty's pool at Manjimup.
Yeah.
Now, there's no ocean at Manjimup. There is down at Windy Harbour.
Yep.
But I remember going down there as a little kid and you couldn't park a push bike.
Yeah.
Those people in that hinterland able to get the pleasure of Fonty's pool. What about Mr. Fonty, who saw it and built it? Now, they tell me it's still going, but you asked me about things that didn't happen. A businessman who has since passed away and a massive contributor to Bunbury over the years, the late Robin Malatesta.
Yep.
When I was on council, he came to me one day and he said, Tom, there is a water fun park in Queensland that's gone bust and it's up for sale. He said, I am thinking of buying it. And he said, what I'd like to do is offer to council that I will buy this park, I will bring it over and I will erect it over near the bird park. And he said, I'd like to have the lease of the bird park and the cafe and the waterfront, the water park.
Yep.
He said, I'll make it work. So I went to the powers that be at the time and I got the reasons why it couldn't be done. And I forgot how to fire my dozer up at that time. I just said to Robin, nah, I said, not going to happen.
Yep.
About 3 months later, I got a phone call from the powers that be. Do you reckon you could get that waterfront park?
No way.
I said, no. I said, it's not available.
Yep.
Where is it? I said, it's out at Coolin, out in the wheat belt.
Right.
You know what happened there? The farmers got wind of it. They pooled all their trucks and they pooled all their resources.
Yep.
They brought it over. They erected it in Coolin, which doesn't have an ocean front.
Yep.
You try getting into that waterfront park
Yeah.
in the summertime. People come from Narrabeen, Merredin,
Yep.
Hyden, Narrogin.
Yeah, of course.
It's a blinder.
Of course.
The other thing they do at Coolin, they have the Coolin bush races.
Yep.
I've not been to it, but you can't get to it.
Yeah.
These people with innovation and creation.
Putting a water fun park in the middle of nowhere is a bizarre idea, but it makes sense.
Unbelievable.
Like, it makes sense, you know, when you imagine it, you're like, yeah, a hot day where there's nowhere to swim, take me to a water fun park. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I've never even considered a water fun. Obviously, there's the installation near the old powerboat club there.
Yep.
Which, I mean, the powerboat club, let's talk about that. What can't you put in there that'll work?
Am I right in saying they're going to demolish it?
I know the last time I rode past it, I seen fences up to stop people sleeping in there.
Yes.
The last time I was in there was maybe 5 years ago at a swap meet for clothes. But as far as anything happening at all there, it looks to be just so it would make sense if that's on the cards.
You know, that was built by volunteers.
Really?
People.
Oh yeah, the
late Charlie Horner.
Yep.
Got that place built. One of the successes I had, thanks to the RSL in Bunbury, my friend was killed in Vietnam. He'd only been there a month, Richard Sykes. And they developed Sykes's Park in the preliminary days. And
is that next door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, he lived in Burracup. He worked at the CSB Fertiliser Works.
Yep.
But he joined the regular army. And he'd only been in Vietnam a month when he was hit with shrapnel. But the park that they've built now is just beautiful.
It is.
And Richard would be watching that and thinking, well, this is great. Because when they said they were going to rebuild it, I was panicking. And I went to a councillor of the day and I said, whatever you do, don't let the name disappear from that.
Yep.
And it never did.
Yep.
And there's a nice little plaque there. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine that I was at college with, he served in Vietnam. He came over to see me and we spent Anzac morning looking at Richard's plaque.
Beautiful.
And he brought his own medals over.
Yep.
And he placed his medals on top of the plaque, and he said if Richard had survived, he would have come home with those medals. But yeah, that was a buzz to get that park named, and then for the council of today to have refurbished it. And this Powerboat Club building, I don't know. There might be
because that'd be locally owned, wouldn't it? Like that's an asset of the town of the
it's
a
city asset.
Yeah,
but there was voluntary work. I know that the late Charlie Horner, who was a steam train driver, he was big in getting that Powerboat Club built.
Yep.
Speaking of what we used to have, speedboats, the big speedboat carnivals down around jetty bars.
Yep.
Huge attraction. Water skiers coming up the estuary at night time with lights on their heads and all that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. There's a lot of things where not in my backyard stop things from happening.
Yeah.
I played a huge role in stopping live sheep exports out of the port of Bunbury because my projected vision told me that it was going to be a stinking, polluting thing to the waterway.
Yep.
And I'm not opposed to live exports, but I was very opposed to them happening out of Bunbury. And imagine now the people who live in the peripheral and I had death threats. I had a guy from Bridgetown.
Yeah. We were talking about livelihoods as well.
Yeah, he told me that he would come to Bunbury and break my knees. I said, you can't. They're made of steel.
I thought you were going to say they're already broken.
But anyhow, you know, the not in my backyard syndrome does get prevalent in society anywhere and everywhere.
It's a human thing.
It's a human thing.
Yeah.
You can have it, but not here.
Yeah. And I think also, I mean, the foresight on that's crazy because obviously the live export later on became quite
huge.
Quite the debate, you know.
And the wheat and sheep farmers, they need it.
Yeah.
But what I was saying was build a dedicated port where there's no residential.
So has Bunbury always had, like you would have seen the growth of the Bunbury port in general, yeah?
I carted mineral sands into Bunbury from Capel in the 60s.
Yep.
The port, I was driving machines and trucks when the inner harbour was being built.
Wow.
Yeah, we did
Wow, all right.
we did the above ground work. And when the above ground work was done, then the dredge came in.
Okay.
And the first dredge was the Hyundai Ho from Vietnam.
Yep.
It couldn't touch it. It was a sand dredge.
Yep.
But then they brought in the big cutter suction dredge.
Yep.
And Australian Dredging did that. Look at it. You'll go in there, you drive by and you can see 5 and 6 ships in there. The alumina, the wood chips, mineral sands.
Mineral sands, yeah.
Exporting out of Bunbury and the importing. One of the things that faded was the incoming of fertiliser ingredients like phosphate rock.
Yeah, that's all Albany.
Yeah.
That's all Albany. And urea.
They now bring it down they bring it in manufactured. They bring it down and they store it here at Picton and disperse it from there. But the Bunbury port, it used to have apples, railway sleepers, timber.
Really?
Merchandise.
So what was Jetty Road? Obviously, Jetty Road, that used to be a jetty.
Jetty Road didn't exist. It was a jetty.
Yeah.
And it was all the way with a rail service. Everything went down by rail.
Yep.
And there was the big old jetty-mounted cranes and the ships had their own cranes.
Which is what that crane is at the end of Jetty Road.
That's one of them.
Yeah, right. What sort of capacity would they have had?
Oh, they'd have picked up 2 or 3 tonne.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that sucks. That's a lot of
loads.
loads.
When the landback wharf was built, the jetty eventually faded out and phased out, and then everything was trucked in or railed in to the landback wharf. Minerals went out on a conveyor. The tanks have all gone. The big sheds are still there.
Yep.
What will happen with them, I don't know.
Oh, man. Have you seen them lately?
I've only externally.
Oh, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I was driving trucks 7, 8 years ago now, and they're like a stone's throw off bloody falling over.
Yeah.
You know, obviously they front all that weather and obviously you've also got corrosive mineral sands inside them and salt outside them. I don't know what future they would have.
We were pressed to put the motor museum down there. Well, hang on a minute. You've got the internal problem. You've got the ocean spray.
You can't put vehicles like that.
Are you going to
there.
put your $500,000 rig in there?
Absolutely not.
No. And then there's talk of them being used for different things, entertainment and all the rest of it. I don't know. I don't know. I know that there's some enhancement going to be undertaken very shortly with the access road going down to the old outer harbour.
Yeah.
And that's all about beautification.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that.
Even the pathway, like that's almost made its way the whole way around from VAT 2 all the way around. That's unreal.
Well, I used to drive coaches for Go West when the cruise ships used to come in.
Yep.
And people, not everyone wanted to get on a shuttle bus.
Yep.
They would prefer to walk, and you would see them walking through
Dredging through the sand and
tripping over stones and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to the end result of that.
Yeah, it seems to be happening fairly quickly. In the time we've had, because I got that social skate on Mondays and Thursdays, so you kind of peripherally see what's going on. And of course, the trucks are non-stop at the moment, taking big stone down there, so that, you sort of like not watch it for a month and you look back and you're like, oh, there's a new bit of like land that now exists. Yeah. It's crazy. So it would be very interesting to see. I mean, my experience here was, if we go back far enough, I'll tell you a story I probably shouldn't on the podcast, but my old man actually took me for a round when he was driving for Giachi back in the day.
Right.
And put me up in the cab and showed me around from Iluka all the way back into Landback Wharf and everything off. And I remember back then thinking like, I grew up in transport. I know it looks wild. This is bloody wild looking,
I've carted down there in the roaring July surging ocean.
Yeah, it's smashing. Yeah, it's crazy.
And the trucks in those days didn't have windscreen washers.
Yeah.
They had windscreen wipers, but no washers.
Yeah, you're showing your age, Tommy.
Me and me Foden.
Yeah. So
what?
I had a question here for you. You're a religious man?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah, I'm not devout, but I'm a Catholic.
Yep.
Christened.
You were raised Catholic, or is it something?
Catholic, christened a Catholic, confirmed a Catholic.
And you went to school here in Bunbury?
I went to school in Darden up at the convent.
Yep.
And then I went to what was then the Maris Brothers College in 1956.
Okay.
For 1 year.
So where was it? I've heard of the
That's
Maris.
where the Catholic College is now.
Really? Because they got the Maris Brothers Cricket Club and right, and that's the foundation of that. I'm guessing.
At 54, the brothers' house was built.
Yep.
There was about 3 or 4 brothers here, and then there was a cloakroom, a laboratory, and 2 classrooms.
Yep.
So the junior certificate were in the laboratory, second year and first year.
Right.
And it was all boys, and I was there for a year.
Right.
Then I went away to a college in Victoria for 3 years.
Yep.
And I finished my leaving certificate in 1961 at the Maris Brothers College in Norcia.
Okay.
Beautiful college.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful place.
How much education, where did your education end?
Leaving certificate, 1961.
Wow. And obviously you didn't do any university or anything like that.
No,
you just went straight into the workforce, straight into shearing.
Yeah, no, at the newspaper.
Into the newspaper. What was your role in the newspaper?
I started off working in the advertising department.
Yeah.
And then I was transgressed into editorial, which I loved, but I was on £4.05 a week.
Wow.
Which was $9.
And the fight was worth $5.
And then my brother was a shearing contractor. He came home and he said, you come and work with me. He said, I'll give you 25 quid a week and you keep.
Who cares? You're going to do that, aren't you? Yeah. So tell me, can we talk about the drink and addiction for a moment?
Yeah, at the Southwest Times, we had a baseball team called Times Devils. Mm-hmm. There was 13 baseball teams here in Bunbury.
Yep.
we used to play Twilight at Queen's Gardens, and then on Saturday we would play at Forest Park, the recreation ground,
Yep.
and the very, very early stages of Hay Park,
Okay.
right over by the drain,
Yep.
which was also Bunbury's airstrip.
Wow.
So we'd be in the middle of a game and the planes would be coming. You had to grab all your gear and your bags and run out of the way so the plane could land.
Amazing.
But we went away, the Times Devils, we went away middle of the year to a carnival in Narrogin. And I was the only guy not drinking at this party. And I was getting shoed on and a bit of a girl and whatever.
Yep.
So I had a couple of beers and I liked it, and I had a couple of more, and then I had quite a few more and I liked it, but then it didn't like me because it turned me into a full-blown alcoholic over the years, and I didn't stop drinking alcohol until I was 35 years of age.
So how long did it take you between that first night and looking at the bottle and thinking, I've got a problem?
I was about 19 then, and I knew I had a problem, but I didn't want to accept it. It was everybody else that had the problem, not me.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem. But I had a wife and 2 children, and I always worked, and I worked long, hard hours driving trucks and machines. 19-hour days were nothing. But Beverly was able to, however she did it, she was able to keep the thing together. And at 35, I dusted up a bloke in the then Picton pub, and I thought I had killed him. And I took a look at myself and I thought, do you know where you're going? Do you know what this stuff's doing to you? Do you know what you're doing to your family and friends? Do you know what you're doing to yourself?
Yep.
And I did a course on human relations and public speaking by Dale Carnegie.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And the message dropped at that course over 14 weeks. You're the problem. You've got the problem. There is a solution. You can take the solution. And I bit the bullet and I said at that function, at that seminar, I'm never going to drink alcohol again. And that was 1977.
Yep.
And I haven't. And as I said to you earlier, I'm not a wowser. I'm not a wowser. I admire the people who can drink and handle it. I wasn't one of those people. Took the cork off and Gelignite arrived.
Yeah. Do you think that was something that was in you before the drink?
My father was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And I've been to Ireland 3 times, and alcoholism in the Dillon family was pretty rampant.
Okay.
Dad was the only one that came to Australia in the late 30s. All of his brothers and all of his sisters bar one brother, Tom Dillon, and one sister, Babe, they stayed in Ireland. But the others all ended up in Queens in New York.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And James Dillon, he was a train driver and an alcoholic. And you can imagine driving the train around New York. He was so drunk driving the train he fell out of the loco. Luckily the fireman knew how to stop it.
Yeah.
But he got home that night and his wife and daughters all said, Dad, what happened? He said, I had a bit of an accident at work.
Yep.
But he never drank again. And Dad gave it away when we were kids in Dardanup, and he went to his grave 44 years sober.
Yep.
So alcoholism was inherent in the Dillons.
Interesting.
Very inherent.
I think there's because typically you find the parent either doesn't drink and then the child does, or vice versa.
Yeah.
The parent drinks and the child goes, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, that's not the case for you at all. It sounds like it's something almost genetic.
I had 2 brothers They've both passed away. But my brother, Patrick, who's still alive, I would have spilt more alcohol than he has ever drunk.
Yeah.
He would make a glass of wine last a full night.
Yep.
Whereas me, and I was more of a beer drinker, but a glass of whatever would be lucky to last a minute.
Oh, breathe it in. Yeah.
I think I was drinking out of a bucket in the finish.
Yeah, it's definitely, as someone who's like, I've done my fair share of partying, and even up until recently, I had a bit of a, my friends and family might disagree with this description of it, but I had a relationship with weed. You know, like I would just all day, every day for years. I essentially got out of truck driving and into business for myself. I had a lot of other motivations, but one of them was I just don't want to be told by someone that I can't do this thing that I want to do. And it got to a point where I was like, I was spinning it with tobacco. And of course, the addiction to tobacco is stronger than the addiction to the habit of smoking weed. And then you want to slow down, and the tobacco says you can't, so I wouldn't. And then when I realized that I wouldn't, I'm like, okay, something's going on here, right? So I tried to slow down, and the emotional response to that and how I was treating my fiance and, you know, my then puppy at the time, I was like, oh, this is actually a problem. This is a problem, you know? And from then it's been weaning off and weaning off and weaning off, and it was right up until I was down to just smoking on the weekends. And it was the day after my engagement party. I'm like, oh, I think I'm 100% done, you know? And since then, outside of a camping trip, and even then when I did it, I was just feeling guilty and weird the whole time. But it's funny, you know, like I feel like I'm one of those people who can have a problem with something and step away from it. And even if I have to be in a situation where someone's like, come on, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to pick straight back up and you know, be where I was before. But it's definitely something that I registered with myself. Like, this can get out of hand. This can be a problem.
Yeah, I've got another problem at the moment. I've got some tests tomorrow, and then I've got to go to Perth next week. But the specialist who I saw last Friday from Perth down here, she said, did you ever smoke? And I only ever smoked once in a drunken rampage in the 60s on a weekend in Onslow. We were building a road from Cane River to Nanyatara. And we were in a gang, and we used to work every second weekend. And this weekend when we were off, me and two fellow nutcases from Collie, we went into Onslow, and I smoked a packet of Cambridge cigarettes in one night.
Wow.
And by Thursday night I was convinced that a cocky had crapped in my mouth.
Yeah.
And I've never smoked since.
Yeah. As a non-smoker going to a full pack, that's going to put some hairs on your chest. That's crazy. I think I do have a question coming from a young bloke as a young bloke. The thing that I found that I've seen with like my grandparents, and I've lost a grandfather who was a train. He put the coal in the train for years and years and years. Fireman. Died of every cancer. You know, that was the thing that got him, and it wasn't one cancer, it was every cancer. Just there's actually machines in Bendigo that are dedicated to him because he was such an influential role with the Lions. It was either the Lions or Rotary Club. It was Lions, and how much he did as the president for the Lions in Bendigo. Anyway, regardless. One thing that I see in my grandparents, I've just had another grandparent diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She's very accepting of it. You know, she's like, I'm this age and it could be anything that takes me, but now I know that I've got this, and it could be that, but it could be anything, you know. And, you know, you've spoken of your experience with bad health last year and the experience of your wife at the moment. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that?
When Bev got diagnosed 4 years ago with terminal ovarian cancer, and I got to tell you, I was on the canvas for 3 weeks. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was shaking, and I'm thinking, how am I going to be without my Beverly? Because she's the rock. She's the rock. And I went to my GP and I told him, I said, look, I can't eat, can't sleep, can't stop shaking. And he said, okay. So he gave me a medication. He said, this will take 2 weeks to kick in. And it took 2 weeks. And now, and since that day, I've been able to stay composed and I've been able to stay focused. And as I said to you earlier, I'm doing things now that I never thought I could or would do. I'm not a housekeeper, but anything that I can do, like even Beverly, today would be the first time in 4 years that I've allowed her to drive herself. I couldn't go away because we had a delivery coming to the house, and she had to drive out to the hospital for a blood test.
Yep.
I wasn't comfortable until she turned up at the door.
Yeah, of course.
But it's what's handed to you. I had a friend in Geraldton in earth moving business, a great guy. He lost his sight. And when I would go up there, I used to pick him up and take him for a drive, and I would say, oh, Jim, what's that over there? Oh, Tommy, you got to remember, I can't see. And it used to sadden me. I've got a friend now, we were truckies together, and he's got a big trucking business. He's got a spinal problem and a disc problem. He said, I can't stand up. I go to the yard, go to his business. He said, for at least an hour, that's the best I can do. He's younger than me. People who, they lose all sorts of faculties. Like when I got smashed up, I had 2 years of major surgery. And the surgeon said to me, Tom, if you don't go through this, you're going to end up in a wheelchair. And I said, Doc, we ain't going to live in a wheelchair, mate. You just fix me up. If you got to put a steel nail in or whatever you got to do, put it in.
Yep.
So I got steel knees, steel hips, and I fell over 3 years ago and I smashed my arm, and I've got a steel insert in my upper left arm. And my wife jokes that she's not taking me to the undertaker, she's selling me to the scrap metal dealer.
I was going to say, you got to be worth at least
I'm full of titanium
$150,
Tom.
$200 there, you know?
Titanium Tom.
Yeah.
They love me in international airports.
Oh, yeah, you'd be going off.
Yeah, it wrecks the joint.
Yeah. So you're playing the hand that you got dealt. I mean, and you seem to be doing it graciously. You know, I ran into you at the front of the Motor Museum about a year ago, and you weren't looking great, you know?
That's when I was crook.
You weren't looking great, but you still popped up and you're still just on for the yarn, you know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
it just like, it really like, you know, in the middle of life always, you seem to be able to find anything you can complain about. And it's like, well, here's Tommy Dillon, who's not fighting fit, but the spirit is there, you know? Yeah. And I just right now, I don't really struggle with having the spirit. You might be able to tell I'm quite the passionate, you know, person. But one of the fears that I get is like, I know bad things are coming. Bad things are coming to everyone. It doesn't matter, you know, one day I love this dog more than life itself, but one day I'm going to outlive her. And I have to know that that's coming, and I have to deal with that. And I let myself fearlessly love my fiance, and I can't wait to marry her and have all the life with her. But I may outlive her too, and I'm going to have to watch my parents die, and I'm probably going to have to see my business fail in particular ways that I never anticipated. And I don't know, I sit across from a man who I feel like you've seen so many of the things that I'm talking about, and you still smile, you know?
When I was 45 and I had osteomyelitis, and I had to have surgery on my legs, surgery on my hips, and the surgeon of the day, he was a miracle man, he said, Tom, this is before I was smashed up, he said, I don't see much of a future for you. He said, I think you're going to die early. Well, 45, he was a wonderful man, and he got it wrong because he didn't know, he just assumed. And I'm 82. I joke that I have tried to die. My creditors won't let me die. And I say to others, there's enough people that I know and see and think of that are down and depressed and sad. So I haven't got time to be down, depressed and sad.
Yep.
I want to mix with people Dale Carnegie said to us in our class, emulate successful people and tell me with whom you mix and I will tell you what you are.
Yeah.
You know, he had a book of inspirational quotations.
Yep.
And be nice to the people on the way up the ladder.
Yep.
They're the same ones you meet when you're coming down.
So you've met Dale Carnegie?
No, this was a tutor.
I was going to say, isn't Dale Carnegie?
It's the Dale Carnegie course.
He was like back Napoleon Hill spec.
Oh, yeah.
He would have to be like, if he was still alive, like 130 or something.
Oh, yeah, he's not alive, but this guy used to come down from Perth.
Yep.
And a friend of mine said, Tom, you need to do this course. So I did Dale Carnegie's business management.
Yep.
Public speaking, and I did public speaking and human relations, and then I did sales and marketing.
Wow.
And those courses changed my life because the booze was parked up.
Yep.
And it's about let's go and get them.
Yeah.
You know, let's go and get them.
Creating a vehicle of doing something with that, with that sort of momentum.
Yeah.
How interesting. Have you got, obviously Dale Carnegie's quite a famous author. Do you have a list or a couple of favourite authors or books that you...
I'm not a reader.
No?
My wife can read a book in a night.
Yep.
Take me 3 months to read a book. But all my Dale Carnegie books, I've loaned them to a friend and he keeps on quoting them. And I've got friends here who did their courses and... they became very successful business people in their own right. But I'm just thankful that Dale Carnegie was able to stop my lifestyle and redirect it.
Yeah.
And forever grateful to Dale Carnegie and his 3 different courses.
I think addiction takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy because you're constantly fighting the urge to not do the thing until you do it. Then once you do it, you're using all the energy to do it and maintain it. And like, I'm fine. I can be stoned. I can be drunk. I can keep doing it. I'm fine. You're trying to convince everyone around you don't have a problem. This is all energy.
When I stopped drinking, I thought the South Bunbury Football Club was going to go broke.
Yeah.
They're going a lot better these days and they have won a few premierships.
Absolutely.
And, I'm happy with how I am, who I am, and yes, I'm addressing positively the predicaments that Beverly has and that I have. And fortunately, I've got my daughter is my adjacent neighbour because we live in her granny flat.
Beautiful.
My son's semi-retired in Perth.
Yep.
We've got the 5 grandchildren. We've got the 5 scallywag great-grandkids.
You actually don't have time to be sad.
No. When the great-grandkids come,
I've
got a gumball machine outside with bubble gum in it and they go out there and they raid it and it gives me a buzz.
Yeah, unreal.
And they love saying to me, Poppy, you haven't got much hair.
Yeah.
And they tap me on my bald patch. And little Archie, Bev dyed her hair blue.
Yep.
And he said, Poppy, you should paint your hair pink.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you wait till you get kids, mate. You haven't lived.
Oh, I'm hanging out.
You haven't lived.
I'm hanging out. I feel like it's funny. I had this conversation with just about everyone that comes on the podcast, obviously because it's quite a relevant thing for me at the moment. But I'm ready. I'm ready. You know, outside of just, you know, all I care about is just God, give me children that are healthy. You know, don't let it be too hard on Larissa so that she doesn't have to go through hell for that. But, you know, come hell or high water, it doesn't matter about the money. It doesn't matter about it. I'm just ready. I just want to do it. I feel like I feel privileged to know enough about myself now to know that there is no perfect time, to know when it comes, we'll adapt. It's fine. We've got it, you know. I tell you what, I got one question, and this might bury the whole podcast, but what's your perception? What do you think of the current standing of the council at the moment?
Overall, I'm reflecting on how I used to be, and I retired by my choosing the day I turned 65. 2 days later, I was on the way to Canada and Alaska.
Yep.
So I told the mayor of the day, I'm giving Bunbury a gift. I'm going out of here, so tranquility will prevail.
Yeah.
Across the board, I've got to be honest, and I've got to say I'm not impressed.
Okay.
I'm a great believer in Mayor Jason, and I'm hoping that I'm right in judging the CEO.
Yep.
But around the table, there's a lot to be desired. And you haven't seen or heard the last of me, Jake, because I'm on your case
Yeah, I
and
know.
a couple of your mates, and I don't know if I can do it. I might have to give you a bit of a biffin.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, Tommy. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I called you at 8:30 this morning and said, would you? And this is how you respond. Yes, I'll be there at 3.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Thanks for the coffee.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
made a bit of a mess on your desk.
No, don't worry about that. That's part of it. Do you have any departing words for me, for the audience that might be watching? Is there anything you'd like to say?
When the going gets tough, the tough get going.
I love it.
Or in motorsport, they say, when the green flag drops, the BS stops.
Let's go. You heard it here first, folks. Anyway, be good to your mum because we are out.